The CEO of Rainmaker just gave himself away. After deadly floods devastated Texas, Augustus Dorico went on national TV and repeated one word like a mantra, unequivocally. He said it 12 times, insisting that their cloud seeding operations had nothing to do with the catastrophic flooding. Well, body language experts saw right through it, and then came the bombshell. Trump's EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin announced they'll release everything about geoengineering and contrails. Now, for decades, Americans looked up at the sky asking what those streaks really were. Now we're getting answers. Durham floods, Texas floods, weather chaos nationwide, all after admitted weather modification programs. They're not controlling climate change, they're controlling the weather, and people are dying, and the evidence is overwhelming. While they manipulate the weather above, you can protect the next generation below. Remember, freedom's never more than one generation from extinction, and that's why the Tuttle Twins created the most effective Liberty First content for kids. Their monthly magazine, seen it right here, it teaches children about economics, liberty, and responsibility through comics, activities, and real-world lessons. And right now, subscribe a loved one for just $56 per year. Yes, those dollars are seeds of liberty. You go to TuttleTwins.com/next. Don't let your child be indoctrinated by those who think government should control everything from weather to your thoughts. Teach them to think critically about power and freedom. The link is in the description. TuttleTwins.com/next. Arm your kids with the truth today. Okay, this is huge. Okay, I never thought I'd see this, but now we are. Trump's EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin announcing the EPA will now compile and release everything they know about geoengineering and contrails. Check this out.
In fact, concerned Americans have urgent and important questions about geoengineering and contrails. The American public deserves and expects honesty and transparency from their government when seeking answers. But for years, people who asked questions in good faith were dismissed, even vilified by the media and their own government. That era is over. The Trump EPA is committed to total transparency. As a result, I tasked my team at EPA to compile a list of everything we know about contrails and geoengineering for the purpose of releasing it to you now publicly. In other words, I want you to know everything I know about these topics and without any exception. Instead of simply dismissing these questions and concerns as baseless conspiracies, we're meeting them head on. We did the legwork, looked at the science, consulted agency experts, and pulled in relevant outside information to put these online resources together. Everything we know about contrails to solar geoengineering will be in there. That means that anyone who reads through this information will know as much about these topics as I do as EPA Administrator. To anyone who's ever looked up to the streaks in the sky and asked, what the heck is going on? Or seen headlines about private actors and even governments looking to blot out the sun in the name of stopping global warming? We've endeavored to answer all of your questions at the links on your screen. In fact, EPA shares many of the same concerns when it comes to potential threats to human health and the environment, especially from solar geoengineering activities. The enthusiasm for experiments that would pump pollutants into the high atmosphere has set off alarm bells here at the Trump EPA. Prior to now, EPA has never been this proactive to raise awareness about concerns with geoengineering and to stop this activity from being scaled up. This is what it looks like when government actually listens to the will of the people and doesn't try to squash it. You can always trust this administration and this EPA to take your concerns seriously, answer your questions honestly, and carry out the will of voters with integrity.
Oh, wow. We are living in a new age. Okay, so let's go check out the Will Cain show for a minute here. Jesus Enrique Rosas, unequivocally. A. Dorico replies to whether Rainmaker contributed to intensifying Texas flooding.
All the families that...
The question is whether or not Rainmaker, cloud seeding on July 2nd, contributed to storms that occurred on July 4th. Did it enhance? Did it intensify what we saw some 36 to 48 hours later?
Unequivocally, our cloud seeding operations on July 2nd did not impact the flooding that occurred later. And that said, my heart and prayers are still with all the people of Texas and all the families that have been affected. It was a tragedy. But in cloud seeding on the 2nd, one, we are regulated by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, and we have what are called suspension criteria, where if there are National Weather Service flash flood warnings or severe storm warnings, then we cannot operate in those areas per the restrictions and regulations we have. Our meteorologists actually proactively suspended operations a day before the National Weather Service issued a flash flood warning. So we were ahead of the curve there. And then even so, the precipitation that we induced, right, like the very best operations can produce tens of millions of gallons of precipitation over hundreds of square miles. That is de minimis relative to the remnants of the tropical storm that came in and dumped trillions of gallons of precipitation.
So you were able to produce, in short, something like this much rain, less than a centimeter of rain, and the flood itself, the storms themselves, it filled up a 20-foot pond, an Olympic-sized pool, 20 inches of rain. Mm-hmm. And so your argument is, if anything, we contributed the tiniest bit. I want to end with one somewhat scientific but skeptical question that I think you're ready to answer. I've listened to hours and hours of your content and read about Rainmaker. And the question is the silver iodide that you put into the atmosphere localized to one cloud, capable of remaining in the air, and as a new storm system moves in, supercharging that storm system? Could that have happened in Texas?
So supercharging, no, absolutely not. Remaining in the atmosphere, no, not that either. When you seed the clouds themselves, when you disperse the silver iodide into it, and then it precipitates, that aerosol, that particulate precipitates down and out within the course of hours. Now, if you were to just disperse aerosol into open air, then it could persist longer. But one, we were seeding clouds rather than dispersing it just in the open atmosphere. And two, any amount that would have remained in the ensuing days and hours from our operation would have been so radically diffuse that have been lower in concentration than just the background dust.
So it either produces rain within an hour or two, or it dissipates within, I've heard you say something like 12 to 20 hours, meaning some 36 to 48 hours, once the storm moves into Texas, your silver iodide would no longer be part of the equation?
No, not at all.
All right. The question is...
Okay. So here we have more from the head of Rainmaker.
Very good. If you turn the Sahara Desert green, that actually would not be very good, because the dust from the Sahara that goes over the ocean, over the Amazon, results in a lot of the cloud condensation and then precipitation. So if you turn all that green and the dust stops getting kicked up, you might actually reduce the precipitation over the Amazon. So like when Rainmaker gets to the scale in a decade or so of like actively terraforming the planet, making it more lush and green and symbiotic than it ever has been before, we're going to have questions that we have to answer about like what the consequences will be globally. But I think that humans are pretty good at engineering solutions and building new technology and building new systems to make the world better. If you turn the Sahara Desert green...
Yeah, dude. Thanks.
Well, how it works. I don't think that the unknown unknowns are that great. Like I said, we have 80 years of data on this stuff. Like we know pretty well how it works. And we haven't seen any of this sort of adverse consequence. I mean, at the very least, right? I don't think that the unknown...
Oh my goodness. Let's keep going here. And we got some massive flooding in Durham, North Carolina. Triggers ongoing water rescues. Flash flood warnings dominating the area. This 16 hours ago. Regions like Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and Raleigh also face severe conditions. Massive flooding. What is going on? Another one. Here is Western Lensman posting this with Bill Nye, the science guy. Of course. he blames fossil fuels.
About it is you You can't just float your way out of it.
Yeah.
It knocks everything over. Everybody knows you pick up a bucket of water, you know how heavy it is. And you get a lot of water going that fast. So what are we going to do about it is the ancient question, and it would be to stop burning fossil fuels. When you're in a hole, stop digging, and so on. But the fossil fuel industry has been very successful in getting organizations like the U.S. Congress to think that it's really not happening.
Well, and the first 6 months of the Trump administration, we've seen an end to some of the federal efforts on not just fossil fuel, but other efforts that had been in place government-wide to promote alternative energy.
Yes, you can't.
Yeah. Oh my God, Bill Nye, not even a scientist. Okay, what is this here? The weather modification CEO admits cloud seeding operations conducted in Hill County 2 days before, but Augustus Dorico, Rainmaker, claims the release of silver iodide into the atmosphere did not cause the floods. He says 2 cloud seeders would have dissipated after a few hours. Here we have North Carolina, Pittsburgh. Oh my God. More scenes from Durham 18 hours ago. Unbelievable. Cars submerged. I mean, look at that. Speaking of climate change, CNN admits the American people aren't concerned about it.
Activists are Americans afraid of climate change? And the answer is Americans aren't afraid of climate change. Climate activists have not successfully made the case to the American people. I want you to take a look here. Greatly worried about climate change. We have data going all the way back since 1989. Look at that. It was 35%, 2000, 40%, 2020, 46%, and 2025, 40%, which is the exact same percentage as back in 2000. Despite all of these horrible weather events, the percentage of Americans who are greatly worried about climate change has stayed pretty gosh darn consistent, which kind of boggles the mind a little bit. Granted, everything that we see on our television screens, our computer screens, the hurricanes, tornadoes, the flooding, but yet greatly worried about climate change, 40% in 2025, the exact same percentage as back in 2000. Are Americans afraid?
Yeah, because Americans don't believe it. That's why. Here's more from the CEO of Rainmaker, admits they're playing God and thinks it's their duty.
Please address, people can listen to longer form interviews that you have done about some of the safety and research that you've done on what you use to cloud seed. Now, I want you to please address a larger question, which is one that is somewhat broad and perhaps even religious, but are you playing God? Are you messing with things that you shouldn't be messing with when it comes to the weather?
I get this question all the time, and I totally think it makes sense to ask it. My intention is to serve God. I think that in Genesis 1:26 through 28, and then throughout the Psalms and the rest of the Bible, God tells us to take dominion over and steward creation, both for our sake, creation's itself, and then to honor him. And so if there are droughts and we have the tools to mitigate the damage done by them for our sake and for nature itself, then we should deploy those for the sake of tending to and stewarding the world. And if we weren't to do that, if we were to ban cloud seeding wholesale, despite knowing that it's safe, despite knowing it could help alleviate these problems, we'd be abdicating our God-given responsibility to be stewards of the world.
Okay, let's address what people can listen to.
Deep, deep answer. Holy cow. So, if you got value from this report, tap subscribe. My final thought is next. It's not conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy fact. Rainmaker CEO admits they're seeding clouds while Texas drowns. Body language experts catch him lying on national television, and the EPA confirms they'll expose everything about weather modification. Meanwhile, radical climate activists blame fossil fuels while ignoring the planes literally spraying chemicals into our atmosphere. CNN's own poll shows Americans aren't buying climate change narrative anymore because they see the real manipulation happening right above their heads. Pirate Wires revealed that Rainmaker's founder thinks he has a divine mission to control the weather. It's not science that is playing God with deadly consequences. Kerr County buried their dead while this CEO claims innocence. Durham, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, all flooding after atmospheric interference. So my question, should weather modification programs be banned as weapons of war? Tell me yes or no. And support real journalism by checking out our merch shop. We're exposing what they are spraying. You can trigger a liberal with an Alligator Alcatraz shirt or President Otto Penn shirt. at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.